Welcome to Friday, July 29th, 2022. Can you believe July is almost over? It's being brought to you today by Cowboy State Daily. Cowboy State Daily has more original Wyoming news content than any other news organization in the state. Sign up for their daily email newsletter and check them out on their Facebook page. Well, it's going to be warming up. I think a lot of you, especially east of the divide, have been enjoying temperatures which have been down considerably for several days. In fact, some areas really struggled to even get past the low 70s yesterday. But as that high pressure ridge that retreated to the west coast and the Pacific Northwest, bringing them hot weather, that high pressure, though, is going to start to move back east. However, monsoon moisture is going to remain in place across the southwestern United States, and those states listed there get into the far southern Wyoming this weekend. So there's still going to be showers and thunderstorms, and we could still have heavy rainfall, especially in the mountains of those states there. It's not going to be as cool with temperatures beginning to warm up. High pressure begins to move back into the Rockies by the middle of next week. In fact, it really starts this weekend. And by early next week, that high pressure ridge, that heat comes back on in. So we've got some hot weather coming. I do think this next wave of heat is going to fall short of the really hot weather we had in early July, but it's still going to be plenty warm. And monsoon moisture remains around. But I tell you, we've got big model disagreements next week. And this is really important, especially for central and western Wyoming, eastern Idaho, and southern Montana, which has really been cut off lately from any good rain because the monsoon just can't get into those areas. We have real conflicts in the modeling on whether or not it could actually have some decent chances for rain in those areas I just mentioned, and we'll show you that. Great shot of a fog bow from Sioux Kersey, south of Laramie this morning. Laramie seeing some heavy thunderstorm activity around over the last couple of days from that monsoon, leaving around some moisture to help morning fog, and a little bit of a fog bow this morning. And you can see we've got the high pressure still anchored off the west coast into the Pacific Northwest, and the high also in the southeastern United States. But things are going to begin to change. But that monsoon moisture flow is still in place. Now, that monsoon moisture flow, as we have been reporting, has led to a lot of weather across the western United States as that subtropical moisture has been deep. And here it is as of this afternoon. Look at over Southern California and into the Great Basin there, western areas of Arizona and up into Las Vegas. And speaking of Las Vegas, heavy downpours, just a classic monsoon thunderstorm in Las Vegas last night, causing some pretty significant flooding. That is not unusual at all. I've seen several reports that this was a freak event. It wasn't. This is the monsoon in the summer in the deserts, and this has happened to Las Vegas many times, and it won't be the last time either. Now, I neglected to report on the big hail that occurred Wednesday night in the Estes Park, Colorado area. Thanks for Tony for mentioning that. I completely forgot to mention this. They had to get the snow plows out in Estes Park from not necessarily really big hail, but just a lot of small hail. And boy, this is just a classic situation where you get these slow-moving, monsoon-driven thunderstorms that can produce not only some heavy rain, but look at that. If you didn't notice there were leaves on the trees, you would say that that's a shot out of December with all of that snow piled up there. And you always run that risk in the monsoon season like this to have hail events like this. And I know scattered about the high plains and in the mountain areas, I know other folks saw similar situations. And here's why. The satellite imagery showing a deep flow of monsoon moisture coming up out of the southwest. It looks just like the same photo I've shown you all week. But you can see back here, the western edges of that monsoon has pushed further back, so you can see why Las Vegas got into the heavy rain yesterday. Now, speaking of the monsoon and winners and losers, there's been a real definitive line between who's gotten wet here over the last 4 weeks and who has not. Casper, Wyoming is a good proxy for how dry it's been since June in some parts of central and western Wyoming. Casper, for the month of July, only 0.3 of an inch, but look at this. This is more important. Since June 1st, Casper's only had a ½ inch of water. Now, that was after a really wet April and a really wet May. So for the year, Casper for the year actually is a little bit above average. But for the last 60 days, boy, things have really dried out in the Casper area. Now, let's go further south into central and south central Colorado and look at Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs has had let's call it 4 inches of rain for the month of July. So just a big difference between Colorado and Wyoming and where the monsoon moisture has been. However, maybe next week we can get it further north, and we'll show you maybe how that might happen. So this is by Monday. The high pressure ridge gets back over the Four Corners area. The low comes into the Pacific Northwest to bring in some cooler weather to Washington and Seattle, while the heat begins to build back over the south and the Intermountain West again. And as we look ahead, this is what the moisture looks like. The precipitable water gets very deep. We did also see some thunderstorms in the deserts of Southern California, which again, that happens this time of year. It looks like it's going to be a deep pocket of moisture. This is by Monday afternoon, coming up into the deserts, even California, maybe getting into some shower and thunderstorm activity into the Sierras and the deserts again. And look at those Great Basin states, very deep moisture again. This is by Monday. By Tuesday through Thursday of next week, that axis of deep moisture gets further into Montana. And look at central Wyoming and western Wyoming. Lots of blue there. That's some really deep subtropical moisture. Now, this is according to the European model, which brings that axis of deep moisture right into the central and northern Rockies again, maybe bringing a better chance of needed rain to places like Casper, Lander, Riverton, the Bighorn Basin, up to Billings and into those areas. This is the European moisture pattern showing that it's just perfect. The clockwise rotation around the high that's now back into western Missouri combines with the counterclockwise circulation around the low, and that just draws that moisture northward into the region. However, this is the European model, and it shows also the heat building on in early next week as well. But as we look at the GFS, or the American model, the global forecast system, instead of the high being over Missouri, the high is stretched out between these two areas here. And look at this jet stream dip. The jet stream dips right into here. And basically what this does is this completely cuts off the monsoon flow from getting into Wyoming and Montana. It keeps it down here. And you can see this on the precipitable water forecast. Look at that. One model shows very dry air. This is the GFS model. The other model shows very moist air. Flip a coin. Which one will win? Well, I will tell you that a lot of times the European model is better. Sometimes it's not. The European model, in fact, has really had poor performance over this past year, while the GFS has sometimes performed better. However, I'll tell you this, the Canadian modeling and the Japanese modeling does support this solution a little bit better. So we'll update you Monday on this for you folks in the central and northern Rockies that have been drier and you've been missing the monsoon. Maybe there's a better chance for you next week. Speaking of next week, that's when I'll see you then. See ya. Have a great